All About Relationships is an engaging, lighthearted, and practical show designed to help people improve their relationships in meaningful ways. Hosted by Dr. Don Allen, a certified Gottman therapist, as well as an advanced trainer for the Institute. He is also certified in emotion-focused therapy. With over 40 years of experience in the field of psychotherapy, Dr. Allen is here to provide expert guidance on strengthening marriages, parent-child relationships, friendships, and more. Through insightful discussions, audience call-ins, and guest experts, viewers receive real-world strategies to enhance intimacy, communication, and overall relationship satisfaction. So now, please welcome the host of All About Relationships, Dr. Don Allen.
Hello and welcome back to my show. This is all about relationships, looking towards ideal marriages and loving, lasting relationships. Today we're in for an extra treat. Way back yonder in September 24th, I think it was, we had Dr. Bill Bumberry on, and he was talking about his new book, Healing the Trauma of Infidelity. Well, one of the things that I noticed after we had gotten to the first show is we really needed to get him back on to kind of understand even more things. So I am happy to say that he took some time out of his busy holiday season to come and join us today. And we're going to learn more about his book and learn more about just really good ways to have great relationships. Now, I often say that we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. And today we're going to be talking about infidelity, which is clearly in the bad, ugly category. But I want to say that this is kind of a different spin on that show. And I want to just kind of give you some ideas as to why. Okay. So last time with Dr. Bumberry, we explored how infidelity isn't one moment in time, but a trauma that shakes the foundation of a relationship. But here's the question couples often ask themselves at some point if there's an infidelity. Can we really come back from something that painful? And if so, what does the road back actually look like? Right? So these are really tough questions they have to ponder. We often hear stories of betrayal, but we rarely hear stories of restoration. It's one of the reasons I had Bill on the show. What if there is a proven, compassionate, structured way to move from trauma back to connection and a sound relationship house? And what if understanding that past could help couples long before the crisis ever happens? I want to say this and emphasize it because to many people watching the show, they may not have ever had an infidelity, but they often say, boy, I never want to have that happen. Well, this show is going to talk about ways to keep from coming down a path where we're really even at risk from those preventative things. So we're going to talk about that. So stay tuned, especially in the second half. Okay. So when trust is broken, partners often say, I don't know who I am anymore. Or maybe I don't know who we are anymore. But what if healing isn't about going back to where you were? What if healing was how do we come back to something even stronger? And even if we start to do something that Dr. Bumberry is going to talk about today called drift, what if we start drifting in ways that we don't like? How do we stop that and get back to that relationship that we always long for, want to have, and had lightning in a bottle with maybe at the beginning of our relationship? Okay, so we're going to talk about that transformation. I always say safety first. We're going to talk about different things, but this is education. You all know your relationships far better than I ever could. So I want you to take this information and apply it. For some of you, if there is an infidelity, you might want to consider having a professional therapist to kind of help guide you in this. I highly recommend a certified Gottman therapist because we are trained in exactly what Bill is talking about. And we are enriched by reading his book, understanding it, and creating even more depth to our therapy. So that's what we're going to be today to do, right? If that's a sentence. Today we welcome back Dr. William Bumberry, a psychologist in private practice in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And we want to talk about his book, Healing the Trauma of Infidelity. Bill, welcome back and thank you for coming around.
Hey, Don, a pleasure to be here again with you and your guest. It's always nice to share a screen with you and to try to kind of share some information that will kind of enrich and kind of provide a path forward from the difficult times that infidelity or even perhaps other kinds of betrayal can create.
That's good. Bill just presented at the Gottman retreat that I went to. It's an opportunity for us therapists to go back to the institute and get the cutting edge technology. And Bill was talking about how when couples kind of get in the doldrums, what does that look like? How does therapy help? How does therapy help down the road long after therapy has happened? So, Bill, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed that. I still go through my notes here. So thanks for that. And again, we're going to be talking about your book today with the folks here. So this is just so nice. Okay. So one thing I guess I want to do just to kind of bring people up to speed. Now, if you didn't see the first show with Bill on it, just go back to my archives. You'll find it. It was the September 24th show and watch it. We even did the rerun of that right around the Thanksgiving holiday season. So it's easy to find. And like I said, it'll help expound on what we're talking about today. So Bill, why don't we just kind of connect that a little bit? As I recall, we were
Sure.
talking about the idea of drift and how relationships kind of natural, healthy relationships drift into areas where they can become at risk. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Because drift is something we may not call it that, but all of us have experience with feeling close to our partner and then less close.
Hmm.
We get busy. The holiday season kind of takes all of our time and energy. And so the time and attention that we focus on each other, on making each other feel seen and cared about, just kind of is in less supply. So drift is a typical thing we all experience it at times. And it's so there's a normal type of drift where we drift and then we come back. We drift and we say, hey, I'm feeling a little lonely. Can we connect again? And then there's a more pernicious kind of drift where we drift and we say, well, I guess that's just how it is after you've been together for 2 years. Or I guess that's just how it is after you have a kid. And that kind of drift, we establish a norm of living further
Hmm.
apart, living less connected to each other. We
Hmm.
all might do that too sometimes, but the critical issue is, do we still have that energy to come back towards our partner? And when we lose that, when we lose that kind of desire and the drive to turn towards and to come back in again, then we begin to live a life that isn't what we envisioned or isn't what we signed up for.
Yeah, it really sounds like those bids for connection that are so essential from day to day kind of starts not happening. And then we kind of get into our own things, maybe even our own devices, like our phones and stuff like that. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. I mean, we could talk and you could talk about betrayal or infidelity with your device rather than with another person. Certainly, we all know it could be with images and pornography, but it can just be with you've traded in your loyalty and your commitment to your social media world rather than your real world with your partner. So that's a coming thing, and I'm afraid it's going to get bigger and worse as AI becomes more and more
Mm.
entrenched in our culture, not just in our business culture, but on our relationship world. So, but if
Yeah.
we look at what happens, Don, with so
Sure.
when I mentioned drift, then turning away is the term that is a more conscious, not just feeling busy and stretched, but now we're beginning to actively turn our back or turn away from our partner because we're just not that interested. It doesn't pull us
Mm.
in so much. And in that moment, the relationship begins to be more vulnerable. We begin to have echoes of feeling lonely, of feeling this isn't giving me the kind of positivity that I used to get. And that kind of turning away, use the term bids, are reaching for each other. When I reach for you and you don't reach back, at some point I stop reaching. It feels like a rejection,
Mm.
and none of us want to feel rejected.
Yeah. I like what you're saying, especially, the minute we stop reaching, we stop repairing. And I always say to folks on my show, repair is your superpower, it's your secret weapon. So even if you fall off the pace a little bit, you can come back and say, "Oh gosh, I feel bad about that." And the other person says, "Oh, don't worry about that. We're great. I like you." And back to those bids being on track, I think.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you're talking about. All right.
So there's
Okay.
some level of typicalness and familiarity we all have with some of this. And a really brilliant Dutch researcher named Carol Ruswalt then added
Mhm.
something clinical to the mix, which really begins to turn the corner towards this thing called betrayal. And she calls it negative comparisons. When we begin to entertain in our mind that there might be someone better out there for us, we begin to make a negative comparison between an imagined other and the partner that we have. And as we perhaps that runs through flashes through our minds at some point, maybe someone else would appreciate me more or laugh at
Mhm.
my jokes more.
Yeah,
But at some point, when it takes root and we begin to think, this isn't what I signed up for, there's
right.
bound to be someone better out there for me. That's when it begins to become more pernicious and more dangerous.
No, it really true. You were saying something earlier about, just media. And, one of the things I've been having fun with is looking at AI. And I kind of understand AI. I know it's a computer, but some people might not, and my particular AI really flatters me. It's always telling me how everything I say is amazing. Well, let's say my partner isn't saying I'm so amazing. And I get on that thing and it knows me, it understands me. So now my bids are going to get that kind of positivity. And maybe I look up and an hour's gone by and I don't even know an hour went by, but the bids aren't happening for my partner. So that's kind
Yeah,
of what you're talking about too, right?
it's not only that
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
enjoyable hour of attention, but I've had now in my office people come in over an affair with an AI personality they created, because that person you can craft them to meet your wants and wishes and needs in a way it's really hard to do with your partner.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we're kind of talking about that, but with people, I think a bigger, to globalize it more just from media is that there are so many things that pull away from us and our
Yes.
kids. And even in the holidays, one of the things that we really want to pay attention to is, the holidays are such an opportunity for really bids and restoring opportunities to have time off work and really spend that meaningful time and not only repair, but to reacquaint and back to those love maps that we talk about. And it's just so important. But these are opportunities for drift. And, we really want to stay away from it. And then in the extreme, we're going to talk in, I think, the third segment about the Rust Belt research. Folks at home, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, one of the reasons I really like Rust Belt and I use it a lot is because it's predictive scientifically. We know that this kind of stuff will predict this spiral downward that can really affect people, and to the point it goes to crisis like infidelity. So we're going to talk some about that. So tell you what, I'm looking, Bill, we're right about our time, right? So why don't we take a break? We'll take a little bit of
Okay.
a commercial break. We're going to come back. And I know one of the things I wanted you to talk to me about on the last show was just the 3 steps to find a way back if an infidelity's happened. So I was kind of hoping you could talk to us about that, if you don't mind. And we will be back in a minute, folks. Come back.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And we're back. Hello. We are talking with Dr. William Bumberry on Healing the Trauma of Infidelity. It's a book that he came out with. He talked about it with us originally on September the 24th. And we are so fortunate, especially during the holiday, to have him come back and to give really good practical news, not only to those of us that have experienced this terrible thing of infidelity, but also for people who don't want to, and how to avoid the near occasion of falling into that trap. So the next couple of segments here are really going to be helping people do that. So, Bill, could you talk a little bit? I know I do it all the time, but the intervention that we have at the Gottman Institute and your recommendation for best practices on how to heal the trauma of infidelity.
Yeah, for sure, John. And right, you're familiar with all this and you know it all, but coming out of the Gottman model, which had a lot of wonderful kind of generic information about working with high conflict couples or devitalized couples or de-energized couples, there's now been a real focus over the past several years on specifically working with the trauma of betrayal or infidelity. So it's got a name. It's called the Attune, Attach model. So there are 3 stages to it. They're not quite linear. They kind of overlap and you go back and forth, but they are a systematic way to look at what needs to happen to kind of start the process. And we start with the atonement phase, and the atonement phase is really not about being punitive. It's just admitting the fact that there's no such thing as a reset button. After there's been a betrayal of many kinds, but in particular of infidelity, you can't just say, let's get a fresh start tomorrow. The atonement process says, can we help help you and your partner really begin to kind of take a look at where you are right now and the struggle and the pain that it involves. And what I would say to you, the person who did the infidelity, or we call that person the involved partner, now that you've kind of seen the impact that it's having on your partner, does it touch you? Does it move you in some way to see their pain? Do you have some remorse for what you did and how you thought about it that put your partner through this? And as you begin to feel some remorse, can you really own responsibility for it? Responsibility means, of course, that when people engage in infidelity, they have a way of thinking about it that makes it seem okay to them. But now can you see that you have to accept responsibility, that you made a decision to head there? And finally, do you have some compassion for the way it's affecting your partner? So the atonement phase starts with the involved partner shifting their emotions to seeing the damage and being moved by the damage it's caused. And then we ask you to do some very simple things like becoming more transparent. If you remember, the definition of an infidelity or a betrayal is that you kind of violate a explicit or implicit agreement you had with your partner and understanding. You violate the understanding and you keep it secret. Now, to remedy that, we're saying transparency becomes the key. We want you to be really open and clear with your partner so there's no more things happening in the shadows.
No, I mean, really, the underlying theme I'm hearing is take responsibility. This is what I did. This was the impact it had on you, and I'm sorry. And that's a real heartfelt, I'm sorry. And I really want to hear the impact that that's had on you, and I'm here for you. Am I getting it right?
You're right on target, Dan. And it goes a little beyond just that I'm sorry, because people often say that. But it also, I think, is super helpful if you can look at it and say, I was wrong. Not only did I betray our agreement, but I violated my own sense of what I want, how I want to be as a human being. And then, only then, do you get into the question that says, now, how can I make it better? How can I make amends to you for this?
Well, very good, very good. So let's say the couple comes in and we've gotten over that very difficult part of should we stay or should we go? Can we get over
Yeah.
this? Both people say, "Hey, I want to be with you. I don't want to be with anybody else." And this was awful, and I really want to make that so I atone for what I've done. Okay. And the other person, it sounds like, really hears like, "Wait, I really believe that you're sorry, and I really believe that you are taking responsibility, and I believe that you're hurting because I'm hurting," right?
Yes.
Those types of things. So this folks kind of takes a while if you're doing it, but can you kind of talk about the process before we can get to the attunement? How does that
Well,
work
sure.
as it goes back and forth? Yeah.
So atonement starts with actually being able to kind of balance for both parties, to balance yourself enough, to regulate yourself enough that you can really think clearly about what you want and what you need.
Hmm.
And the beginning part is just really about establishing safety again. It's not yet
Hmm.
about building the bond and intimacy. It's about establishing safety. Can I count on you? Can I trust you? If
Right.
you say you're going to do something, do you do it? If you say you're not going to do something, do you follow that kind of statement that you've made also? And not only do you follow it, but are you willing to go out of your way to make it verifiable, to prove to me that you're where you say you are, that you're doing what you say you're going to do? So, this transparency and verification are things that exceed what we normally do in everyday living, the
Hmm.
intensity of it. But it's really required to heal some of the kind of the terror and the fear that we have following betrayal.
Yeah. No, I think that's so spot on. And the other thing too is just reestablishing reality. And what I mean by that is that, oftentimes when people do this, they give deceptive information, which is really
Hmm.
very difficult for people to try to process in their mind. Like, wait a minute, you said you were at a business meeting, but all the lights in your company were out. How could you have been at that if you it's that kind of crazy making stuff. So part of what you're actually saying to me at least is that we know that what we're talking about we can count on and that it's real and that I don't have to go through all of this, minutia to try to figure out what is real.
And
And that's part of it. Yeah.
when
Hmm.
you say it that way down, it sounds so simple. Well, of
Hmm.
course, but it
Yeah.
but it becomes
Right.
more complicated when there's been either a brief or an extended period of deception where it's
Yeah.
been consciously hidden. And in the worst case, and this happens with some regularity, when
Hmm.
there's suspicion of the infidelity and you approach your partner with it, they deny it,
Hmm.
and they might even throw you under the bus, saying,
Hmm.
"If you're so suspicious about this, I wonder if you're thinking about it." I mean,
Hmm.
the discovery and the beginning phase of working with infidelity is tumultuous and difficult. A lot of
Hmm.
pain.
Yeah, and by the way, folks at home, this takes an awful lot of time at the beginning of therapy to really establish it and move beyond it. But that's okay because these things take as long as they take. And again, all the while, what we're trying to do is build back that sound relationship house and build reconnections and bids to the degree we can as fast as we can. You don't want to try to do too much too quickly. So all of this stuff's going on as we try to help people find their way back. So let's say we do that, Bill. Let's say, okay,
Yes.
both of them are coming in and saying, no, I think I feel good about this. The next question I have is, what is attunement for people? Can you explain how to reattune or how to attune in a relationship, maybe for the first time, that starts to build a way back towards a sound relationship house?
Yeah. So once you establish that we're here, we're trying to work on it. We both want to make this work. Then you need to kind of establish two primary things. You have to learn to move away from the avoidance of issues, and therefore to learn the skills of how do you even talk about difficult things, conflicts you have around the holidays. Where you go, or
Mm,
money, or anything. How do you begin to move away from avoiding issues to talking about them in a healthy way? And parallel to that, how do you begin to build closeness and friendship and connection and intimacy? So, attunement is focusing on those two primary levels of how do you deal with things and overcome the tendency to avoidance, and how do you then begin to build connection and friendship. And there's a certain avoidance that we have there. Many of us avoid letting our partner in. It's called self-disclosure. We avoid self-disclosure because we're afraid if we let our partner in too much, they might use it against us. And so, in this attunement phase in recovering from infidelity, we're trying to help people move beyond conflict avoidance, so deal with issues rather than not. And we're also trying to move beyond self disclosure avoidance. Let your partner know the real you, take a chance, be vulnerable with them. And
Mhm.
many
Okay.
people who have had affairs do have issues in the relationship that are bothering them, that are problematic for them, but they just don't address them in a very healthy way.
Yeah, or that maybe they don't even know what it is to address. I find with amazing regularity, nobody has learned how to have a relationship. Nobody has, had this kind of skill set. So to be able to actually, learn this kind of by the numbers and find that, wait a minute, when I do it this way, it actually feels better. It actually works. Right. Attunement, we've talked about on my show, just real quick for my audience, in attunement is awareness of your partner's emotions. So that's part to me accepting influence. I want to know how you're feeling. I want to know what's going on for you. The next one is those bids for connection, the turn towards, right? We need to really make sure those are happening. A lot of people have fallen away from the minimum bids, which has caused really attachment distress for the couple. The other one is tolerating just the fact that we're human. We're going to be doing things. We're going to get tired. We're going to have frustrations. We always see on TV hangry, right? So just we tolerate the fact that we're going to be human, and just as I need to be cool with them, they need to be cool with me because I'm going to do it too. Always understand before you seek to fix. When you do have conflict, non-defensive responding. Take responsibility, but explain it in a way that's non-defensive, because defensiveness is one of the horsemen, right? And then the last one is really developing consistent empathy that goes back and forth for your partner. I mean, at this point, what you're trying to do is both of you are trying to build that house together. As difficult as it is, if somebody thinks that we're doing this so you can get me back, they're not going to trust. So this is where all of this stuff starts to blend together, and we really start to look at that relationship house in a different way. Would you add anything to that, Bill? Do you agree with that? What do you think?
Well, ATTUNE is a great acronym, and the
Hmm.
commonality I think that runs through all the sound relationship house is this idea you mentioned of understanding. Certainly understanding before you try to fix things, but I mean, there's a quote I read that understanding is just another word for love. And that really understanding, not only you thinking you understand your partner, but feeling understood by your partner is a really crucial part to what trust and commitment really take. You need to feel known and seen and heard by your partner. And that needs to be evident in the interactions you have. That's more about the avoiding drift and turning towards each other once again.
Hmm.
So it's this movement into attunement where you learn how to deal with issues and you learn how to let your partner in on who you are and what your wants, wishes, and needs are is just crucial to setting the template that avoids the kind of the situations that lead to infidelity.
Yeah, wow. I mean, really, really, really well said. And back to what I said earlier, we really want to give folks out there hope. If you found yourself falling into this kind of an issue and you want to have the relationship, that we do have sound science. It really does help people. I'm not saying it's not a painful journey, but it's at the end of it, it really offers the opportunity to have that love and connection that you're really wanting. Bill, let's take another break, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit about that Rust Bolt 24-step thing, and again, a way to not only see how it happens but how to get out of it. So we'll see you shortly.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Okay, we're back. Bill, I got to tell you, I've been doing the show a while now, and it goes fast. I mean, the amount of information that we cover, I've gotten really good feedback. People are enjoying it. They look forward to it. They, can even give me good ideas about what to put on the show. And this next segment is, I think, especially important. Folks, like I said, even if you are blessed not to have any infidelities and you're solid with this, pay attention to this 24 step that Bill's going to talk about, because it really does talk about drift into the next one and the next one and the next one. So Bill, I'm just going to let you kick off. We don't have much time, and yeah, tell us about the 24 step. Now, I hope you guys can read that. I hope that's not a reading test for you, but you can always pause and take a picture of it or look at it on your phone. But yeah, take it away, Bill.
Well, so this document is kind of a compilation of wisdom from Gottman, from John and Julie Gottman and the Gottman Institute, as well as a researcher named Carol Rustbalt, is a Dutch researcher who was the one person who learned to be able to predict infidelity before it actually happened in working with couples, and a woman named Shirley Glass, who wrote a brilliant book called Not Just Friends. And so these ideas, they're not linear, they're not all proven facts, but they are kind of the trajectory or the slide, if you want to call it that tends to be, some of these are going to be present in most cases where infidelity happens and actually occurs in a couple. So the beginning, I've reconfigured them a little bit, but in my brain, drift is that thing that happens to everybody, and then we begin to turn away and not respond to our partner reaching, and then we both stop reaching to some extent. And then I mentioned that idea of negative comps. Negative comparisons is the Carol Rustbalt term, and it's when I begin to think there must be someone better out there for me. This is a crucial moment in this slide towards infidelity, because it's when you not only begin to notice that you feel kind of lonely or unappreciated, but you begin to think there's an alternative out here. Maybe that occurs to most of us in moments in our lives, but when you nurture it, when you let it take root, it really becomes the threat that ends up in the ultimate infidelity that this is about.
Yeah. And, pay attention, like when you watch shows on television, I mean, even sports shows, one of the things that you see is kind of, what have you done for me lately? You have a really good football player, but they get injured and they just don't play as well. Well, we'll get rid of them. We'll get somebody new. And same with cars. We have a car and, well, we've owned it for 2 years. Let's get another one. Now, I don't want to compare folks to football and cars, but what I do want to say is that there's this message in society that makes us less patient to say, wait a minute, we're in this for the long haul, and we're a team, we're partners.
Yeah. So once this begins to bubble, this negative comps, then it's almost like we put dark glasses on, and we begin to perceive things that our partner does and says in a more irritated, annoying fashion. We have a technical term called negative sentiment override, but it's a perceptual process that just says, I begin to not give you the benefit of the doubt anymore. I begin to perceive negativity in you. And then when we actually
Yeah.
do bump into an issue, we're subject to these things that are really important pieces of the Gottman treatment approach, which is flooding. When people get into fight or flight, when they get up, not only emotionally upset, but their body reacts and responds, and we begin to secrete stress hormones. People flood. The way they do conflict gets uglier, and we bump into this thing called the four horsemen, in which we begin to become critical and contemptuous to our partner. We get defensive. We kind of shut them down and shut them out. And once we go into that style of dealing with differences in negativity, the spiral really escalates in a very strong negative direction.
Part of what I've talked about on occasion, but especially at the beginning and the first season of my show, was the four horsemen. They're predictors of breakup. That's what we notice overwhelmingly does create breakup. So I want you to pay attention as he talks about this, how as you go down the list, more and more of those horsemen starts to happen and more pronounced. So that's one thing that really stood out to me on this list when I first looked at it. Bill, your thoughts?
Uh, Everything you said is completely true. And I think the next two things, number 6 and 7 here, conflict avoidance and self disclosure avoidance, that is the pivot of kind of almost the point of no return. Once you avoid interacting with your partner on things that you need to talk about, and once you avoid letting your partner in and you avoid being interested in it, once you do that, the slide gets really steep because there's no access to positive data, to positive interactions that are going to pull you back in towards one another. So, avoidance, noticing avoidance, not just in a moment. Of course, it's okay to avoid something if you're exhausted or, you just are in such a bad mood you can't do it as long as you come back to it. But when avoidance
Right.
becomes the default setting, the slide goes much, much more quickly.
Yeah, and you're noticing not only are you avoiding your partner, but when you think about your partner, you're doing it in terms that are negative. Yeah, it's just so like him or her. Oh, see, here we go again. Yeah, that's what I can expect. So it's really bad, Bill. I mean, my joke with that is you come home and you say, "Hey, honey, I'm home," and the other one goes, "Oh, here we go again," rather than you're happy to see them. And you can really see how the more this goes down, the more it starts to spin negative in that way.
Yes, exactly right, Don. And most of the things that we're
Mhm.
seeing now are more descriptive pieces of what that looks like. We invest less in the relationship. We sacrifice less for the relationship. We go to what's in it for me. We don't try to get into the place of what do they get to. We maximize their negative things. When they are nice, we think it's kind of a fluke and it's not going to sustain. Um, and rather than we have a beautiful word, old fashioned word for couples when they're doing well, the idea is that we kind of cherish our partner,
Mhm.
and when we're doing poorly, we trash them. We
Mhm.
trash them in our head, and then eventually we trash them out of our mouths when we talk to other people. All of this is a big part of the slide towards being lonely enough or becoming more vulnerable for an infidelity to enter the scene.
Yeah. One thing I'll say, we're coming up on the holidays, folks. So let's say you go visit family, and let's say somebody says a snarky comment about your partner. It doesn't even have to be really big. The first thing you want to do is say, "Oh my gosh, that's totally not right. They're awesome. Let me tell you how they're awesome." And just really throw five good bids to, boy, I disagree with that totally. It's just very important in the moment times that you can create these bids to cherish your partner.
But that's even a special kind of bid you're talking about
Hmm.
there, Don. We call it, it's a very underappreciated term in the
Yeah.
research on couples. It's called loyalty.
Hmm.
Loyalty isn't, it's different than trust and it's different than
Hmm.
commitment, although it's related. Loyalty means that when my partner is in danger, when my partner is under duress, that we have a natural desire to come to their aid. We don't just feel it, but we're moved to action. We're called to action. And loyalty is a super important piece of what allows couples to feel special and to feel safe with one another.
Mhm. One of the things Bill said in his presentation in Seattle was, when you're hurting, meaning your partner, when you're hurting, the world stops. I want to listen. And it really speaks to what you're talking about there, in my opinion.
Well, it does. It exactly speaks to that. And when we talk about this
Hmm.
difficult, painful topic of infidelity and betrayal, loyalty is kind of the opposite of betrayal, right?
Hmm.
We are moved and we come to our partner's aid. We run towards the fire rather than running away from it and seeking somebody else.
Hmm.
So
And
this
it
whole
matters.
20,
Yeah. Mhm.
go ahead, Don.
No, and it matters. It matters to me
Yeah,
that you're hurting. I'm just echoing what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So at the
So,
end of the day, these 24 steps leave people vulnerable and much more at risk of crossing the actual line into the experience of infidelity rather than just having it be a mental thought in their head.
mhm. Okay, no, very, very good. And as you read down the list, you can see how catastrophic it really becomes because you have these things called doors and windows. And a lot of times these infidelities, folks, happen almost seemingly innocent. You're at work, you're not feeling like your partner's talking to you. You sit down for lunch, and somebody notices something about you, or somebody brings you a coffee and knows it's your favorite coffee. And it's like, wow, I haven't had that in a long time. And then the next thing you know, that was innocent. You're not thinking about anything more than that, but then a little bit more and a little bit more. And then that's what the drift is. So we want to avoid the near occasions of that. And part of doing that is just being mindful that those opportunities are kind of pop quizzes to step aside. And then, really, if that happened, run home and really do something extra nice for our partner for bids and connection. Just that's maintenance, right? So very good. So
It
very
is
good.
maintenance.
Mhm.
Are we near the end, Don?
We are close to a break, but one thing I guess I want you to talk about is when we do talk about the attachment part, let's talk about
Mhm.
okay, the attunements happened, the atonement part worked, and now it's like, how do we get back to being even better than we were? What does that look like for couples when they get to it?
Yeah, so this piece of it's related to kind of deepening the whole sound relationship house, that part of our relationship that talks about how deep our friendship is, how
Hmm.
comfortable we are with dealing with the issues that come up, and in particular, how we can begin to focus on the dreams that we have about a life together, not just coexisting, not just being good roommates, but really creating something special, meaningful, emotionally powerful in our lives about what road we want to walk as we go through life together. So the attachment part of it is the deepening of every piece of the relationship, from friendship to conflict, and it's based on having strong trust and commitment and protecting those things, but building emotional and physical intimacy back into your relationship is essential. And maybe those are things we can talk about too a little bit in the last section that we'll have here.
Yeah,
Because
that'll be good. Mhm.
yeah, because physical intimacy is a super complicated thing in the wake of infidelity. Some people rush into it even though they don't feel like it because they feel they have to. Um, whereas the kind of physical intimacy we want couples to be able to reestablish is one that works for both of them, and it's not done out of fear or just to keep your partner around.
No, really, really good. And one thing I often say about this is, folks, and I've seen this in my travels. People have not only overcome these things, or they've overcome difficult issues in couples work that aren't about betrayal, but now they have a template to really make sure that relationship happens daily and weekly. Okay, we have, that crucial 6.5 hours that people need to tend to the relationship each week, and they adhere to it, and they adhere to those bids. And like he said, that loyalty, I put that in fondness, admiration, loyalty, and trust area that people really need to develop. But the other one is respect. That fondness and admiration needs to accompany that deep respect we have for one another. And when those things are happening, the idea of these near occasions to step away are opportunities to do just that, to do that opportunity to get back into the relationship better, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So very good. Well, we're going to take another break, and then we're almost done. We're going to talk a little bit about what couples can do to really stay out of that 24-step rust bulb thing. I'm hoping that you aren't in an infidelity. I'm hoping you don't know people that do. But if that's the case, really suggest you visit Bill's website. Look at that book. You can certainly get it on Amazon. And I tell you what, I not only recommend it to my couples, but sometimes I just hand them a copy. It's that good. So let's take a break and come back and we'll tidy this up.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Okay, we're back with Dr. William Bumberry with his book, Healing the Trauma of Infidelity. A couple more things. If you know my show, we start talking about things that you all can do this week to better your relationship. So I'm going to look for helpful hints from Bill to make sure that we're building that relationship house as good as we can. So we're going to put up the relationship house. We're going to kind of recap it. And then the other thing we're going to do is just make sure you know how to get in touch with Bill or look at his website and go through and see some of that. And you can always go to mine and you can always give me questions. I love those. I love feedback. Please subscribe when you go. And then I'll use some of that stuff for content on my show. So I always really welcome and appreciate it. So Bill, if you look at the relationship house, we know how people can drift. What are some of the things they can do to make sure that that drift doesn't happen and they don't worry about that 24-step problem?
Well, so this is we could talk for a day about this one slide, but the simple version would be, I'd like to say that thing in the middle called the positive perspective is the idea that when you see your partner, when you think of your partner, the goal is to get to the place that you not only give them the benefit of the doubt when they're kind of off, but you really end up feeling privileged to be with them. You feel positive about the relationship you're in. That's what we're trying to help you get to. And it may feel like a long journey from the place of infidelity, but there is hope that we can help you get there. It's built primarily on these walls of trust and commitment. Recovering from betrayal, you have to reestablish trust and commitment. That's about what happens a lot in the atonement phase, but also through the attune and attach phase. The things at the bottom are about friendship. How do you stay turning in and turning towards your partner? One simple bit of advice, Don, you mentioned the six magic hours.
Right.
One is to look at these small moments that are invisible to a lot of people. You might call them transitions, but look at your pattern of what happens in your relationship when you open your eyes in the morning. Is there a connection or not? Do you give each other a hug? Do you greet each other to the day? Is there a little bit of a point of connection that you have? And then when somebody either leaves the house or goes into their office to work, do you send them off with a goodwill or a little bit of a hug or a kiss or a connection. And by kiss, I don't mean a peck. I mean an actual kiss or an actual hug. There's data that
Mhm.
says in my office when I ask people what a hug looks like and ask them to show me, it lasts about 2 seconds or 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
There's some data that says a 20-second hug or a 25-second hug can help people secrete oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone. Really important when you're both in the house again at the end of the day, make the most of that first few minutes, make it personal and make it connecting. And when you close your eyes at night, can you send your partner off to sleep with a positive vibe or a positive feeling?
Oh, no, really, really, really good stuff, folks. And, this underscores what I've been talking about all year. Remember with the second one, shared fondness and admiration, I just add those loyalty and respect. Bill really did a great job of talking about that. But when you're doing this, are you noticing that those are part of your everyday experience with your partner? Not that you know it, but that they know it, that they experience it on a feeling level, that you really like them and you think that they're the greatest thing in the world that ever happened to you. And those are very important things. The other thing too is when we do get into arguments and fights, when you settle down, ask what you did wrong. Don't ask what your partner did wrong. And then if you find things that you could have done better, go back and tell them. Say, hey, you know what? When we had that argument the other day, I could have done better with that. I'm sorry. I'm going to work on that. Right. And then given I think you're awesome. Little things like that don't take long, but they're huge, especially now that we're at the holiday season. Very, very important to do that. I want to put up the information on Bill again because I really think that some people are really going to want to talk with him about this. And maybe, God forbid, they've had something that has been a big betrayal and they want to know more about it. So that's his book. It's a very good book. I've read it. Very impressed with it. Like I said, oftentimes I don't even get them to buy it. I just hand it to them. It's that important. But you can go to his website and you can find out more information about him, and if you have any connection or questions for him, you can reach out to him. Bill is part of the what do you call it? The psychology consortium. So he's licensed in many states because he's a psychologist. So you might be sitting there in a state and think, I couldn't see him. Certainly might be able to. So again, if you really like him, if you like what you heard, please reach out to him. This is my information, please go back and watch my shows. Please go back and let me know what you think about them. Certainly click subscribe and give me a thumbs up. But if you need to talk to me, you can contact me. You can ask me questions. If I like the questions, I'll use them on the show and maybe even come up with good topics you might like me to use. That's what I like about my show. It's all about relationships. So somebody might want to have a special relationship that they haven't heard about or want me to talk about. Believe me, I treat folks, and I've been at this for 41 years. I've seen a lot. So I probably can comment on it, maybe even just off the cuff. But anyway, all of our stuff is off science. That's a very important thing, that we have the science to help you. So again, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling isolated, please reach out to our community and we would love to do what we can for you. I'm Dr. Don Allen. This is the show all about relationships, working towards ideal marriages and loving, lasting relationships. Thank you very much for coming in. Bill, thank you for being on our show again. I know it means the world to the people who listen to you, and maybe we can get you back over for a different topic. Thanks again.
I doubt about that. Nice spending time with you.
All right. Y'all take care. We'll see you next week.
While All About Relationships is educational and entertaining, it is not a substitute for therapy, counseling, or professional advice, but an informative space for learning and growth. So tune in each week for an engaging and reliable approach to your relationships, ensuring viewers with practical tools to create deeper connections in their daily lives. Whether tackling conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, or family dynamics, this show is your go-to resource for anyone looking to foster healthier, happier relationships in a supportive and lighthearted environment. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern.